Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. I am joined today by Brad Hunt. Brad, introduce yourself.
Just the nobody intern that likes to have a good time.
Yeah, friends. That's who Brad is.
Yeah.
Brad has been on a few podcasts already, but he's a fun guest to have. And young, knowledgeable hunter.
Getting there. I still look up to a lot of people and like, you can always get better. And I always want to try and improve, and
Yeah.
eventually I'll expand my horizons.
So lately I've been reading from, I have a ton of hunting magazines. They all come to the house. And lately I've found some interesting articles I've been reading and sharing on the podcast. And I found an interesting one I thought you guys might appreciate. And this one is regarding target panic. Okay. And it's written by Bill Heavey. He talks about his target panic issue. And for those who don't know, how would you describe it, Brad?
Basically, I've been pretty lucky and haven't had a lot of it. But when you're going to release your arrow, that target is everywhere. You're not be able to focus on that one spot. Or
I would say
smooth.
I would say it's an uncontrollable.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Uncontrollable
panic
to punch the trigger
Right.
without aiming properly. It's not a controlled shot. It's
Right.
just a reckless shot. That when you come up, you begin the aiming process and you just. It's like premature shooting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you're not ready. It's not time yet, and it goes off.
But it goes off.
And it's interesting because this article references Joel Turner from Shot IQ, Iron Mine Hunting. And Joel's been on the podcast a couple of times. He's been on some older episodes. If you want to go back and Google Gritty, Joel Turner, you'll find the podcast I did with Joel. And he's helped a lot of people overcome target panic, including like my friend David Brinker. He coached Ryan Lampers and I together one time on a controlled shot process. And he's helped quite a few people.
Yeah.
He does some classes, and this article references him. It's an interesting article. It says The Flinch. It's called The Flinch, Sportsman's Life. It's, like I said, it's in Field and Stream by Bill Heavey, or Heavy. I'm not sure how you say it. Before we get into that, go to our description field, and you can find links and other coupons that we're using. Always support us that way. You can use the code GRITTY.
Save yourself some bucks.
Yeah, save yourself some money on Sissy Sticks. Save yourself on Heather's Choice. Save some money on Valkyrie broadheads. Save some money on Graxaw game bags. Seek Outside shelters. Those are all partners that work with Gritty, help us keep the show going, and they got cool stuff, and you save. So check that out. All right, let's get into this, Brad. The article says, I love everything about shooting a bow except for one tiny thing. Hi, my name's Bill, and I have target panic. Hi, Bill. For the last couple of years, I've had to hunt with a crossbow. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing against the horizontal bow. To me, though, it feels like I'm wearing Depend Fit Flex underwear for men on the outside of my pants. Every pro I spoke with has had to deal with target panic too. Shoot long enough and you'll experience it, they say, even if you won't admit it. Shooting a bow accurately is the easiest thing in the world. Draw, anchor, align your sights on the target, and release the arrow. Boom, bullseye. But somewhere along the way, some lima bean-shaped node in my brain, every important area of the brain looks like a lima bean to me, decided it wanted a bigger piece of the action. The next thing I knew, I was flinching. The involuntary tick that ruins the shot. I can feel it getting ready as I draw. Even as I vow not to flinch this time, then I send a brand new $13 gold tip downrange, and I know before it arrives that it will miss my Rhino Block XL entirely and hit the brick wall of the house with an unmistakable sound of a carbon arrow splintering. But if you shot some Black Eagle, it probably wouldn't break. Actually, gold tip's a pretty tough arrow.
They are.
But I think you should invest in Black Eagle arrows for sure. He says, nothing else on earth sounds quite like it. Any smart person packs it in after an arrow like that. He settles down and regroups. He knows anger feeds target panic. Me, I just want revenge on my flinch. You want to see stupid? I ask it. Oh, I'll show you stupid, buddy. And then I shoot another half dozen arrows, 2 of which follow the first into the bricks. That's $39 worth of stupid. Yep, that flinch knows who's boss now. Have you ever done that, Brad?
Yeah. I have.
I say you just get a bigger piece of foam.
Exactly.
And then you don't have to sweat it so much.
Everybody needs one of those 5x5
That's
block
right.
targets.
Like we used in Arizona.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Wild Arrow loaned me a big 5x5 block target, which I dumped out of the truck. And then you can stack your tiny Reinhardt broadhead target in front of it. And then you have far less shot anxiety. That's for dang sure. Especially out to 100 yards.
And I've a couple times like this. Not a lot lately with this, kind of teach myself trying to more controlled. But I remember younger, especially in high school and stuff, is you'd want to be cool and shoot an 80-yard shot, and hit the target. And you miss the first time, you're like, I got to hit it the second time, You miss it the second time. And when you go to your dad and say, hey, I need more arrows, he looks at you a little funny and like, you got to do some more work.
You're going to have to earn those arrows.
Yeah.
No, I'm the same way. I've done that. I don't do it as much anymore. Ego's not as big of a problem. I remember doing Total Archery Challenge, and you miss a target, and you're with like 8-9 people, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to redeem myself right now.
Yep.
And you shoot it, and you miss again. You're like, I'm going to do it again, and you miss again, and you realize you kept missing because your single pin was slid to the wrong thing. You're so eager to prove and that you didn't.
You missed an easy step.
Yeah. And all it was your sight wasn't dialed, and it's like the stupidity when you're like out there to.
That ego just gets in the way.
Yep. And so now a lot of times when I miss at the Total Archery Challenge, I'm like, I missed. And I don't shoot twice. I don't let it get in my head. I'm like, well, I missed.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often nowadays, but when it does, it's like, I don't know what happened, but I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
This is archery. I also said this the other day on a podcast. I used to get so twisted about not having my arrows grouped at 1 inch from each other.
Right.
Even out to extreme yardage, I wanted these tight groups.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm in a paper plate at 20, if I'm in a paper plate at 70, I don't care.
They're vitals.
If they're all within that 4-inch group, 5-inch group, I don't care.
Yep.
I just don't care. I have some buddies I shoot with that are absolute killers. They don't obsess like that. In fact, they're not as good at shots as me. A lot of them. Right. And yet they kill. It just goes to show that you don't have to be Levi Morgan to hunt.
Exactly.
You just have to be consistent and stable and make a controlled shot.
Yeah.
Because
no matter how well you shoot during practice, when you get in the moment on an animal, if you can't control that adrenaline and stuff like that,
it's a different thing.
It's different, Yeah. Because I'll admit it, I missed some really nice deer and elk.
Well, there's this. Don't you agree that you are more likely to miss the bigger the opportunity?
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Like it's like, dude, I smoked that, but I didn't care if I shot it or not because it was a fork and horn, and I was just tagging out.
And those are the ones like when you don't care because it is a fork and horn.
Just like he said in this article, aim, shoot, hold it, blah, blah, blah. It's like he says shooting a bow accurately is the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And that's why new shooters, they're just like my wife, it's like everything's a bullseye. Because at first you're like, oh, you just hold it here and you just shoot. There's no anxiety. Yep. Yeah. There's no mental.
That was my wife. So a few years ago when we lived in Pocatello still, we went out with some friends and I borrowed one of my friend's wife's bow. And, basically about the same as my wife and as far as stature and stuff. And my wife, we started her out at, I think, 10 yards just to get her shooting. And we backed her up to 20 and she started popping the balloons that we had. And we're like, well, let's back up a little. And we went as far as we could. It was like 35 yards because we were indoor shooting.
Yep.
But she, didn't know any better and just dead eye.
That's what I mean. A lot of new hunters, especially new archers, they love it and they're really good and they shoot for like a year. And then the second year, they start having problems. And then in the third year, they're a wreck.
Yep.
And they're like, what am I doing?
And I think, too, if you don't have somebody there to correct those problems early, they become a bad habit.
Yeah.
And then it's really hard to – and bow hunting, as long as I still have bad habits, But
right.
Just eventually, the older you get, I think the more experienced you get, you learn to – kind of control those shots a little bit and stuff, Well,
let's get back in the article and we'll follow his story some more. He says, that night, I'm a Stone Age hunter stalking a mastodon in a dim landscape, complete with Fred Flintstone boulders and distant volcanoes sending out puffs of smoke. My subconscious is not original. At 3 yards, I pull the bow, and it feels effortless. This is because the string is detached, floating in midair, at which point I discover that pantomime has no more killing power in dreams than it does in real life. The one monstrous elephantine beast becomes 3 monsters, all about to stomp me into fruit leather. At which point, I wake up screaming, sheets twisted in my hands, to another day of target panic. I love to blame my problem on the tremor from the medications I take to counter the depression that comes, in my case, either from a chemical imbalance or the suppressed rage I feel from being raised by loving parents and educated at excellent schools. Possibly a combination of the two. All target panic sufferers are convinced at some point that their equipment is to blame. Mm-hmm. I was sure it was my release, so I got thumb, caliper, and back tension versions. I quickly discovered that my target panic is of the multiple platform variety. I flew to Seattle for a session with a coach, Joel Turner, whose online Shot IQ course deals specifically with target panic. He's a SWAT team leader and precision pistol instructor and has the clear blue eyes of a total badass who drinks maybe 3 beers a year. Shooting a bow causes a little explosion, Turner says, a shock to the body. And your body doesn't like surprises. It anticipates the shot and braces itself, flinching. He says your only hope is to reestablish complete control over your shot. Resolve to shoot perfectly or not at all. Perfectly means you draw, aim, and simply watch the bull as the pin wobbles. You watch rather than try to steer the pin because steering ruins your form and because aiming is something we do automatically. Ask someone to point at a blank piece of paper and they'll point to dead center. Accept the wobble, he says. Like, accept the wobble because you can't control it and because your aim always returns to center. Really, trusting the wobble is more accurate than my efforts to aim is. Of course, the hard part, but it can be done. You know, when they say accept the wobble or accept the float, you know, when I was talking to Joel, he likened it to this. He said, when you're driving down the road and your car starts to drift into the left lane, you correct the steering wheel. And then when it starts to go off the road to the right, you correct it. And you're just always in between the lines. And you just have these little micro adjustments that are automatic. You don't even think about it. You just keep the car in the middle of the lanes. Right. You're not going, when you start to go left, oh my gosh, I got to turn right. Oh wait, I got to turn left. You're not consciously whipping that wheel around. You're just bringing it back to center. When you do point with your pointer finger and you're looking down at what you're pointing at, right, your finger's not perfectly steady. It's wobbling around. Yep. And when it goes a little to the right, bring it back to the left, it just auto corrects. When you want to aim at something, your mind brings it right back to center. So when you're at full draw and you have your pin on that target, it's always coming back to center. Yep. When it drifts off, you're already bringing it back subconsciously before you even know it. And you go too far one way and you're always floating it around, but you're hovering over your target.
And I think a lot of it too, kind of going back to Joel's example, is like if you're driving, if you're looking right in front of your car and going fast, you're going to be all over the road versus if you're looking in a distance. I think it goes for the same when you're looking at your target or an animal. You look at that animal, not at your pin, you know?
Yep.
And you get used to basically having that almost like a peripheral or whatever. You have your target and then your pin will be in there. And like you're talking, you're still getting that float to the target that you're looking at, whether it's an animal or a target.
Because the temptation is, as soon as the pin is where you want it, you try to time it and punch the trigger. Bam. You try to send it. But the problem with that is you now are anticipating the shot going off.
Yep.
And so you brace for the shot, actually, like grip the bow or
clinch it
or just tighten it right at the moment you're getting ready to punch the trigger. And that has an impact on your accuracy now. Yep. You're way off.
And I've, with a little bit of experience, I've noticed that. Even in I would say the last 3 years maybe, I really used to punch a trigger. And I still shoot with a wrist release. So I'm shooting with my index finger. But I've learned with that because I am comfortable. And in that moment when I'm on an animal, I may have to punch it.
Right.
And I haven't used, I've used some thumb release. I've used the back tension a little bit, but I'm not going to be able to punch it with that. Thumb release, you might be able to, but with the back tension, there's no way. Where I'm going with this is is if I'm practicing with my index release while I'm target shooting and stuff, kind of doing that pull through, I find myself not punching it near as much with an index finger release. It's very easy to punch.
Yeah.
You know, and I find myself, if I'm doing my back tension, but I'm still using my index finger, not pulling my finger, but kind of pulling through my finger, it has helped a lot.
Well, you're a really good shot. You're a really good
Try
shot.
to be.
You are. You're a solid shooter. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the better shooters that I hunt with. Actually, you're not Levi Morgan.
No.
But at this,
In my head, I am.
yeah. But it's like we said, you're in that dinner plate.
Yeah.
At all the yardages.
Right.
And you're grouping well with your broadheads, with all your gear.
Yep.
And when you take that ability and you take it to an animal,
Right.
you're able to execute the same efficiency, most of the time. Like we all get a little,
excited.
Sometimes the moment's bigger than we are, but
My dad will admit, he's like, I never get buck fever, but I've seen my dad miss with compound, with a longbow, some giant mule deer. And it's like, what happened there? And I just guessed yardage wrong. Or, it's like you used your rangefinder.
it just so happens it's a 230-inch
Yeah.
mule deer and you had trouble. No, it definitely, you can get a little too swallowed by the moment for sure.
Yep. Adrenaline kicks in, like buck fever, as they call it.
You lose your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're not thinking the same way.
No.
That infusion of adrenaline and the hyperventilation.
I've done it. I did it this year.
It causes problems.
Even on that big bull this year, I looked at the branch above me and I was like, yeah, I'll be all right. Hit it. Sure enough.
Yeah,
arrow went
with
right
less
between his legs.
adrenaline, you would have made a better
I
choice.
just stepped out of the tree like
Right.
a half a yard and I had that bull killed.
I know. One of the biggest bulls I blew. There was a tree branch right in front of my arrow, but I thought I cleared it. And I'm like, all I had to do was move 3 inches.
Right.
But I was so eager to shoot that I hit that branch.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? Because you're not thinking.
Clearly.
Yeah. So often, accepting that float, letting that pin just kind of be there,
Yeah.
and then letting the shot break, when just on its sort of on a natural process,
Right.
is really how you're going to have a more effective shot.
Yep. And over time, the last couple of years, has been through, because I haven't had a trainer. I haven't had anybody teach me.
Yeah.
But through like the podcast, listening to Joel Turner, listening to guys that are a good shot, how they do it, how they go about it, has helped me immensely. I've started shooting with a purpose
Yeah.
versus before I was like, I'm going to just go send a bunch of arrows downfield, And over the last, I would say probably 6 years, I've kind of got that mentality of I need to shoot with a purpose. But the last 2 and 3, I've really dialed that in and tried to, every time I shoot with a purpose.
Well, I found that if you want to be a tournament archer or a 3D guy or shoot spots or something, perfecting your archery game to that next level, it's different than kind of what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Being proficient with your hunting rig so you can kill animals, that's really my goal at the end of the day.
Yep.
There are guys who want to be way more than that. Go listen to a different podcast. I just want to kill animals.
Yeah.
I want to have a successful hunt. I want to be a good archer. But I found I'm a lot better archer on a hunt now than I was when I was trying to be the next, professional shooter.
Yep.
Just less going on. I just trust in the process that I have.
Right.
But I will say that when I'm shooting at a target, I'm much better at letting that float go. But it's interesting how he mentioned how he got a back tension, he got a hinge release, he got all these thumb releases, he got all these different releases, and he still had target panic.
Yep.
They say that for a lot of folks. If you have target panic, you can develop it with any release.
Yeah.
And Joel will explain that it's not about the release, it's about your controlled shot process.
Yeah.
And he coaches you through it. For those who are interested, you should go listen to the podcast I did with Joel. It's interesting. It's really informative. And I've adopted the things I learned from Joel for sure. I will say this, that for me, a hinge release has been big because it really helped me aim. It really taught me to aim.
Right.
Because when I got the pin that's just kind of floating on the target, like I'm focused on the target and the spot on the target, like you said earlier. The animal's my focus, not my pin, not all that. Right. And the pin is just where it needs to be. And I just hold it there. And I pull through with my hinge. So when the shot breaks, it breaks. I don't quite know when. And I use 2 or 3 different hinges that are set to different levels of hot.
And that's one thing I've shot, I think, a hinge once.
Yeah.
I couldn't get to go off the first time.
It really helped me just be like, okay, yeah, whoa, the shot just went. The shot just went. Whoa, it just took off. It just took off.
Right.
Like, and so it's hard for me to brace for the shot and anticipate the shot because I don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then when it goes off, it's like, whoa, it's gone. And you shoot these beautiful shots
Right.
because you're not screwing it up.
And I should probably jump into one just to get more in tune with it, you know, but like I said,
Well, what I found though is when you're hunting an animal, I hate the thing.
yeah, and that's what I was like, why would I practice with it
If you're not
if I'm
going
not going to use it?
right.
But at the same time, it's going to help you, I believe, with that.
It does teach me to aim better.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I talk to a few archers, a few stubborn archery guys that I know that are like, look, every shot, you know, it's going to go. You know, Lampers knows exactly when it's going to go off.
Yeah.
You know, there's no surprise there. But he also doesn't put any shot input into the rig before he shoots. Like he
Right.
doesn't jerk or flinch. He's very controlled. And so when the shot goes, he has the discipline not to brace for
To
the
tense
shot.
up
And I would say I shot like that forever and still do. Like I don't brace for the shot either.
right.
I'm very comfortable with the shot just going off.
Yep.
So I probably do in some micro, like Joel will tell me I'm bracing for
for
the
sure.
shot. I don't care though, because it's still a bullseye. Like
Yeah.
it's effective at killing. I have noticed that, you know, I can develop bad habits, bad aiming habits. I can rush a shot. One thing Joel told me years ago that stuck with me is most people shoot like 1 full second before they should, or a half second before they should. And so a lot of times when I'm on an animal and I'm there, I'm really anxious to pull the trigger, you know, to send it. But I always think like, nope, wait a few seconds after you really want to punch it and really, really, really steady and stick that thing. And what I found is that little extra wait time allows me to just really put that thing there, that pin where it needs to be, bury that pin, and then send it. When Ryan Lampers and I went to Joel Turner and we did this thing, this was like 3 years ago or so. Ryan did not like having the shot be a surprise. Did not like it at all. He's like, whoa. And he's like, yeah, I'm not into that.
Right.
Like, I want to know that it's there and ready to go. You know, one of the things was he's like, why would you want to do that? Like on an animal, I need to send it.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't have trouble making a reckless shot. So for him, it was like, why change what I do?
Yeah.
Why fix what I do when I'm good? And I think a lot of guys, I mean, unless you're really curious or you want to try that, if you're drilling the target with how you shoot now, I don't know that getting a hinge or trying all these other things is really necessary. I know for me that I was really eager to try it on a hunt because I shot so freaking good out to like 100-yard shots with a hinge. Like my group's out to, I remember shooting out at No Limits in Denver on this elk with broadheads, and I'm like grouping in the paper plate at, it was like 107 yards. And I was like, I never could shoot like that with a trigger.
Right.
Never. And I'm just like floating them in there one after the other. And I'm like, I am good. And then I go hunt and I made some long shots. I think my longest shot is 92 yards on a mule deer that I smoked in front of a camera crew. It was like there was some pressure there, and I'm like, under the perfect conditions, without wind and other things, and you got time, the animal's really still. I would prefer to use a hinge every time.
Right.
The problem is, in most hunting situations,
That's not the case.
either I was a hero or a zero with a hinge on a hunting excursion. I found I'm very accurate with a thumb release, being able to, because like you said earlier, I can kind of hook it, my thumb around the trigger, and I can just put back tension and pull, and then it'll go off on its own, like you were saying with your.
See, and I've shot
release.
I've shot a thumb release quite a bit. I've shot the I think it's like the Spot Hog. I shot a couple of those, and I liked them, and I did shoot accurate. But at the same time, I didn't ever put like a string on it, and I lost one when I did hunt with it. Fell off. You know, I thought I could just clip it to my string.
I'm sure it's going to bite me in the rear at some point, but I've never lost mine.
Yeah,
And I don't like having something on my wrist.
yeah. And so you always get the releases that like will fall out of your way. You know, if your hand's up, but
I hate them. I hate them on my wrist. I hate them like falling down and hitting the bow or making noise or just being in the way throughout the day. Or I hate them. I like having it just loose in my
coming
hand.
out of your pocket or whatever. And
Yep.
And
I'm
I
just careful with it. It's like I don't lose my cell phone.
I should get better and try it, but I'm like, just like that Coos deer this year. I'll admit, I know for a fact I punched the trigger on that sucker. Like, I mean, it happened fast.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and as soon as my pin settled, and I guessed yardage too, and as soon as my pin settled, I went like, twice.
Yeah.
Both shot, but they both were right in the moneymaker, you know?
Yeah.
And
you were with me when I shot my Coos deer.
yeah.
It was a poke. I mean, 65 yards on a little Coos.
And they're like,
And he's down, and I punched it. The wind was blowing pretty good.
yeah.
A little breeze, you know, but I figured out where it was. I settled in there. I picked that spot. I stuck that pin there. And I've said this 100 times, like the way that I feel like I'm more effective because the adrenaline comes.
Yeah.
There's no making it go away.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you shoot with high adrenaline is a whole different ball game. Muscle recruitment is totally different. My motor control, fine motor skills in my hand are totally different when the adrenaline spikes. Like I can't control it.
Yep.
It's like hyperthermia. It can't make my fingers work the right way.
In your mind, you want to, and I've heard, and we experienced it this year on that elk hunt. You know, I've heard guys say that I couldn't get it to go off.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm
I experienced it
Yeah.
with a hinge. It was so frustrating because in New Zealand I had some tar that were they'd have died. I just needed, it was so windy, I just needed a trigger.
yeah.
You know, I can hold and steady and punch, and it worked well for me. Worked perfect for me in that scenario. And I do love to practice with a hinge because it seems to help me have good habits, good aiming, forces me to like exercise my aiming ability a lot more. And then when I transfer to a trigger, I'm just deadly when it comes to the hunt.
And that was the only time I've ever tried the hinges. I think I was tensed up because I didn't know if I didn't know when that arrow was going to go off. I couldn't get it to go off.
Yeah.
I kept like,
No, I get.
why is it not
Well,
going
dude,
off?
when I was like this, I was like, this thing would not go off, not to save my life.
Yep.
Okay, going back to the story here, he says, after you've drawn and anchored and are watching the target, pause. This is the critical moment, Turner says, like the pause of a weightlifter about to try to break his own record. Use this moment to recommit to shooting with control. Then slowly increase pressure by stretching through the shot until your release goes off. It doesn't matter where your arrows go for now. What matters is a controlled release, one in which the release itself comes as a surprise. And so when I was with Joel, you could do it with a caliper, wrist rocket release, any of them, any release. It was the same process. You weren't supposed to punch that trigger, whatever it is that you're using. It was a slow squeeze through the process while you're floating, and it should be a surprise. It should be, oh, it just went off. Going back to the article, it says, to test my concentration, Turner stood 18 inches away and lightly tapped an arrow against my forehead. Strangely, this seemed to help me concentrate. When I was able to focus on a controlled release rather than my aim, and I could intermittently, my arrows went into the bullseye. But then the lima bean roused itself, took control again, and I started punching. So he was saying when he's able to focus on the release instead of his aim. Do you do that?
I've started to a lot. Like I said, over the last couple of years, especially, is when I'm shooting with a purpose. Okay, you figure out what your process is, and so it's I pull, I set my anchor point, I pick my target, and then I release. And I start to, even with the finger release, the index finger, I start to pull through. And that is, like I said, I've noticed a huge difference in doing that. Focus on each step. Once you are focused on that first step, move to the second. Get that one, move to your third step, move to your release. My shooting has improved immensely.
Yeah, I would say I don't focus on the release when I'm shooting. I aim. Usually what I'm telling myself is, hold it, 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 hold it. Just hold the pin in my spot. Like I'm looking at, where the vitals are, what rib I'm on. I mean, I pick that actual spot, like the crease, and then I find like if there's a color on the animal, like I'm trying to find a specific thing to fixate my shot on. And then once it's in that spot, I'm like, hold, 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 hold. And when I feel steady and I feel like it is stuck, I just send it. I don't even think about it. I don't have to do much because my release on my thumb button is so touchy. Like
Right.
I barely just put pressure there and the shot goes.
Yeah.
Like there's no hand manipulation. There's no body movement. Once I have that thing stuck, I barely
Right.
put the tiniest pressure and that arrow's gone.
And I do find myself when I'm on an actual animal, I don't think about the release as much because, you know, I'm picking my spot. But I do when I'm target shooting because I was known to kind of punch that trigger quite a bit. And so the last couple of years, I have really focused on when you shoot a boat anchor like I have been the last few years, it's pretty steady, you know? And so it's like, okay, I know I can hold steady there,
Right.
but it's the release. And that's where I was jacking myself up.
Yeah.
You know, I'd punch it or twist a little bit or something, you know?
You know how I practice on a target in a more controlled situation. I use a hinge
Right.
and I just hold while I'm pulling through and relaxing, just letting that pin just float around where I want it, and it just breaks and goes.
Right.
And I shoot a lot of rounds like that. But the deliberate shots when I punch it, which probably horrifies like Joel, I don't care.
Right.
Like it is killing a lot of animals. I'll run up and down the mountain. I'll like do a bunch of push-ups. I'll get my heart rate super high. I'll run over. I'll grab the bow, and while I'm like hyperventilating, I'll pull back. There's no way I'm going to relax into a accurate shot.
Right.
In that moment, I can stabilize my trunk, my core, that shot. I can hold my breath for just a sec, put that pin right where I need it, just for 1/1000th of a
Right.
second, and I can send that shot, and it's in there.
Yeah.
And that to me mimics how I feel when I'm on a real live animal.
Right.
But I don't actually practice that way. Most of the time it's with the hinge, and I'm really surprised and it's controlled. I felt like, though, I had to learn to shoot this other way on a live animal because I just couldn't. Now, if I'm calm, like, for instance, that long shot I took, oddly, I was calm. I had all day. You know, I could just let it float. I shoot like what Joel's kind of describing.
Right.
Let it just float,
Process.
be surprised, let it just go. I had time to be calm. You know, I had time to do that. If I don't have that kind of time, which seems like more often than not,
Yeah.
the other method works better. So I don't know how other guys do it, folks. It's just how I do it. Going back to the article, Bill says, I'd hoped to leave cured with a new dedication to a controlled shot. Instead, I left wanting a talking Joel Turner doll that I could screw into my stabilizer port when I bow hunt to keep me focused. Sadly, that product is not yet available. A lot of people with target panic give up bow hunting altogether. Me, I'd rather listen to Sting for the rest of my life. I can't give it up. I'll be at it when I'm pulling 60 pounds and I have a maximum ethical range of 18 feet. So if you happen to see a guy in a tree stand looking wistfully at a good buck standing broadside at 22 feet, it might be me. And I'd really appreciate it if you just keep moving.
That's good.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I've often felt like if I did have target panic, if I really wasn't able to steady and get a good shot off my effective range was 20 yards,
Right.
then I just have to try to get to within 20 yards. And in fact, I went through a period where I was like, man, I'm not shooting well. I'm in a slump here. I can't seem to get things figured out. I just need to be 30 yards and in.
Right.
I just need to. And it restores confidence.
Yeah.
Because I've always been a better sneaky guy than a shooter. Like, I've never been the Levi Morgan of the world. Like, I've always been the sneaky guy. So I always feel confident I can get in.
Yeah.
I'll get there. And it may not be on day 2. It might take till day 15, you know.
Right.
But I'll get in range, in my effective range. And one thing I do nowadays is I only shoot if I'm dang pert near certain I'm going to make that shot.
Yeah.
There's no, those days of, I don't know, man, I've got a 50-50 or even a 7 out of 10. It's like, nah, if it's a 9 out of 10 shot, otherwise I'm kind of angling for that. I'm going to hold off until I can get that shot where I'm like, yeah, I can make this.
Yeah. I'm getting there. But I'm like, hey, I'm within 60 yards. You know I can shoot that, but
But that's what I mean. If I know I can make that shot at 60,
Right.
I'm taking it.
right.
I have no problem with that. But I'm much more aware of, you know, the rain, the snow that's coming down, or the adrenaline I'm feeling. I'm much more aware, and only experience gives you this. I'm much more aware of a shot I know I'll make and a shot I might not.
Yep.
And so I'm just like, you know what? I'm too nervous or I'm shaking too much. It would be a waste of time.
Yeah.
It'd be a Hail Mary to give up my position right now and take the shot opportunity at this moment because I'm not feeling certain about it.
Yeah.
And often, if I just hold out a little bit more, I'll get the shot I want, that one that I know I can make.
Yeah. And that's with experience, like you talk about, is you gain that because I've multiple times shot and it's like,
why did I do
you should
that?
have waited. He would have came 10 yards closer, you know, and it was like a money shot.
Would have moved behind from that tree. You didn't have to force it through those bushes.
I've done that a lot of times, and it's like, I mean, this last year is a prime example. You know, another notch in my experience belt.
Right.
Next time, I'll just step out from the tree and not shoot underneath the tree through a 18-inch window. You know,
Yeah.
And it's just all experience.
Yep.
You know, trial and error.
It's hard to beat that. I know a lot of guys, you know, friends of mine and others who have really struggled with target panic. It's been so frustrating for them because they love archery, they love bow hunting, and they're wrecked. They're ready to give it up. But guys like David Brinker, you know, I've hunted with David now. He switched from the longbow that he grew up hunting with his whole life. He went back to the compound where he had some catching features. You have the draw coming to the exact same spot each time.
Yep.
You know, you have some things that you can control, your peep and your sight alignment, and you can aim. And he went to that, and he went to a hinge, and he only hunts with a hinge because he's like, Brian, it's the only way I know I can make the shot. And his anxiety's gone.
Right.
Because he's like, it goes off when it goes off. Like, in either things work out and I can shoot, or it doesn't. And it means that his shots, he can't take the same kind of shots that I can that are maybe rushed with a thumb button, you know, where I can force a moment. For David, he's like, hey, because we talked about that. It's like, hey, man, Brian, if it comes by and I get back and I can't get it to go off in the window that it's there, then I let down.
Yeah.
Shot, you know, it was great. It was a fun hunt.
Right.
He won't try to make it go. It's his process. And that discipline has removed a lot of the anxiety that came from shooting with a trigger and a button and all the target panic. For him, it's been liberating to be able to go and hunt and have fun.
Yep.
And know, like, when you come to full draw, that, you know, you just go through your process and you're good.
Of the people I've known, which I haven't known, maybe they have had it, but I didn't really know. But he's one of the guys that has expressed it, and he had a really tough time with that. It kind of...
It crushed him.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, talking with him, he goes from switching from the longbow to his compound and stuff and then shooting with the hinge. Just like you're talking, he has those controlled shots. It's either going to go off or it won't, and that's it.
And he's been really successful the last few years on big game. Shot a bull last year over the counter hunt. He killed he's killed some deer. I was with him on another hunt, and he smoked a mule deer, and it's like he's really felt like he can hunt again.
Yeah.
Archery hunt. So I think there's a lot of guys out there that have been in the same boat and they feel like, you know, they had to give it up. The one thing I'll say too is there's a lot of adventures that can be had. Like Bill Heavey says, he's hunting often with a crossbow nowadays because, you know, he's having so much trouble with target panic. Well, hunting with a crossbow or hunting with a gun, some of these things you're able to have, you don't have as much anxiety and you're able to not have target panic and hunt. And I often think, get back on the horse and have fun. Like if you got to go on a rifle hunt and you're been a long time bow hunter, rifle hunting can be challenging too.
Yeah.
It's a different, don't
There's
give
different
up.
challenges.
Yeah.
There.
Like get out there and have an adventure. Set your rifle up so it's an adventure. A friend of mine a couple years ago had shoulder surgery, so he couldn't shoot a bow anymore. A 60, 50 pound longbow, right? And it's hard. But he could shoot a 45 pound compound with a high degree of let off, right? But he's like, man, I just hate the fact that I can't shoot my recurve. I was talking to him and I said, what is it about he's like, you just have to get so close. My effective yard was 20 yards and in. And I said, you can do that with a compound. Yep. You can set yourself up for the same challenge.
Yep.
Just with the different weapon. It's going to be easier to execute a shot with a compound than a recurve.
Yeah.
For sure. But at the same time, if your biggest draw, one of your biggest draws to it is getting close range, you can set that limit on yourself with any weapon.
Oh, exactly. And that's like because I love target practice long range shooting with the rifle, but I don't get excited about doing that when I'm hunting.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's my mentality, whatever. Some guys are great at it, some guys love it, but I'm like, when I hear guys with a rifle say, "Oh, we couldn't get any closer than 700 or 800 yards," and I'm like,
that's a pet peeve of mine as well.
Oh, man,
Lampers and I both talked about that.
Bugs me, man, and it's like, treat that rifle hunt like an archery hunt. You're going to get, even if it's 200 yards, you're going to get in that zone.
Again, it goes back to know your abilities and your limits.
Yeah, right.
For me, I look at a rifle hunt, and so let's take mule deer this year, for example. We were in deep, Brian and I, and we were chasing some beautiful bucks. My excitement was trying to find that unicorn, that buck that is defied all the odds, that's old as dirt, that only came out right now in this patch where no one has ever hunted in 10 years, because we're out there where no one wants to go, and we're on foot in terrain and conditions during the rut that most people wouldn't attempt, crossing rivers with blow-up rafts and climbing mountains and scaling cliff sides and stuff.
It's a whole different challenge.
It's a different challenge, and it's negative 15 degrees.
Right.
Not 15, negative 15.
You see the picture of the brown face. Looks like frostbite, you know?
my skin was like burnt from the cold. And that adventure was plenty of adventure with a rifle in hand.
Right.
Like, I didn't need a bow and arrow for that.
Yep.
And I just feel like it's the same with a crossbow. I guarantee you, like, weapon, they're all fun to me.
Yep.
They're all fun. When it comes to being outside, there's something rejuvenating about just being there on the chase. I'm a sucker for old animals.
Yeah.
Anything that's grown up.
Right.
And of course, the animal I would take with a rifle, with a bow in hand, is a whole lot different than the mule deer I want to take with a rifle in hand.
Yep. And that's the same with me.
That's how it goes. It's a scale. I'd be stoked to shoot a 140-inch buck with a bow in conditions like that. With a rifle, it's like, I'm looking for a 200-inch buck.
Right.
I'll settle for something less on the last day, but it's
a total different challenge too, because like rifle season especially, I can go shoot a 24-inch 4-point all day long, but I'm like, I don't want to just go kill a deer to kill a deer, I want
a challenge.
A challenge, we already hunt in the backcountry, the deep country and stuff, so that's a challenge in itself.
Yep.
But I want to basically try and outsmart that mule deer buck that has survived for 6 or 7 years. They are so tough to hunt.
Sometimes people that haven't hunted long, it's hard for them to relate, or people who are really pragmatic and are like, I just like the meat.
Right.
It's hard to relate.
Yep.
For me, though, it's the adventure combined with the meat.
Yep.
Combined with providing for my family.
Exactly.
Combined with the weapon and the conditions and the age class. Like, all of it comes together, like, to give me that experience I'm looking for. Yep. And it's all the variables. It's like, it's all contingent. Like, if the area I'm hunting, the biggest animal in it is, a basket 4x4 buck, but that's hard to find.
Yeah.
And you find that, it's like, it's not to do with the size really as much as it's just the challenge. And I think that's a natural progression for hunters. For some people, it's just obtaining the meat.
And I think too, physical ability goes with that. Health, it all kind of plays.
Well, it's so personal too.
Yeah.
Like, some people don't want to go do some stupid 15-degree hunt.
Right.
They're like, are you kidding me? I could just drive around in a truck or in a fancy UTV that I won at Mountain Ops.
Yeah, exactly.
And and hunt different conditions and to each their own.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So everyone comes at it from a different perspective and different goals. And so for me, just go and do your thing and have fun.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say is, sorry to cut you off, but it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks as long as you are enjoying it,
Yeah. Or it's rewarding.
And rewarding, enjoy that experience.
Because I don't know that I enjoy it in the moment.
Right.
But it's extremely rewarding afterwards.
Exactly.
Something about the suffering sucks at the time, but also is rejuvenating.
Yeah. And seeing it's like that buck that I have at the house mounted right now that he's like this close to being 200 inches, and that deer we hunted, those 2 bucks that were together, we hunted those. So we watched them all through the summer, and then opening morning archery, they changed a whole different pattern. And then, we missed. Then they just disappeared.
Yeah.
All through September, all through October, we did not see those deer anywhere. And I spent a lot of time up there. My dad spent almost every day because he was running cows up there too.
Mm-hmm.
He glassed for those bucks. And we just spent time, and it was like, okay, here's the new challenge. It was like, there were some great 180-inch deer that we were seeing.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I know those two other bucks are there. And on like the 25th or 26th of October,
Yeah.
we had one chance. We were in the tops of those hills, and we had one moment that we saw the right side of that deer. And if we wouldn't have seen him then, we'd never saw that deer because he literally bedded, and where he bedded, you couldn't see him. And we were 250 yards away.
That's how those monsters get taken.
They get big for a reason.
Yeah.
And it just...
Yeah. And the thing is, the reason that this whole tangent came up is because if you've got target panic, there's so much opportunity to still enjoy hunting in the outdoors.
Exactly.
In spite of it. Like I said, pick up a rifle, man.
Yeah.
Pick up a crossbow. Don't care.
Yep.
Just don't put your crossbow in my Western archery.
Exactly. That's a whole nother subject.
That's a whole
You
nother
did a
can of
podcast
worms.
on that.
Which, by the way, I love the whole idea of a crossbow. Just
It has a scope.
the efficacy of the weapon
Yeah.
needs to fit in with equivalent weapons. So a muzzleloader to me and a crossbow kind of belong together in a way.
Short
They're about
range
the
weapon,
same.
they're that 100
Same
yards.
skill levels, same range. Yeah, actually, today's muzzleloaders go way further than that.
See, and that's what I love about certain states is they don't allow because the newer muzzleloaders, they're like a 300-yard shot.
They're like a rifle.
They're like a
They're just
rifle. Where shoot open sight, shoot traditional.
Yeah,
it's tough.
It's a different ballgame.
You're still have to get in that 75, 80-yard range, and even then, that's a long shot.
And that's why I say, like, couple that with a crossbow. You still have a primitive season, primitive weapon. I feel like, though, the whole point is, I've said this before, I'll beat that dead horse again. It's all about opportunity for hunters. Give as many people the opportunity to go chase animals, and you can do that when you have a low odds weapon being used, a low efficacy of killing weapon. That way everybody has, you have a 10% harvest rate on average, let's say, or 5, but you're able to give 100 people a tag because only 10 are going to tag out.
Right.
When you give a weapon to a unit where you're like, oh, now you can use crossbows, now 20 people are going to tag out, you're going to have to cut your tag allocations from 100 to 50.
You're right.
And in areas like we said before in Ohio or Kansas or something where I don't know anything about, Iowa, whatever, a whitetail type state.
Right.
Alabama, when you're in those kind of areas, I don't know that weapon restrictions matter that much.
Right.
It's really about private access.
Mm-hmm. And the game there, whitetail are plentiful.
There's billions of them everywhere. They're like rabbits.
Yep.
The supply is ample.
Right.
You can be judicious with your tag allocations when the supply is that high. Some hunters struggle because in some of those states, the age class isn't there because they're so liberal with their tags and stuff.
Yep.
But come out west. Just don't come to my spots.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother subject, too.
Yeah, that is another one. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up. So there you have it, folks. Just a little discussion on target panic and shooting. Hopefully that was useful. Like I said, go check out that Joel Turner. Joel's an awesome dude. If you have target panic, he's a great resource to look up. There's other ones out there, but I really enjoy and really learned a lot from him. Yeah. So you can always check him out, Shot IQ. And with that, we're going to end this podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, stay gritty, friends.